Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your Synthos selection of choice and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Welcome. It's good to have you with us again. Here we are back on the Holodeck.
Ahoy.
It's me, Dave.
And me, Devin.
We are Locutors of Trek. And our topic this week is actually going to interrogate the very thing we are in right now. The holodeck itself. What are they? How do they work? Why do we use them? What are they good for?
And from here on out, we will be talking like we're in a Dixon Hill novel.
That's right, see?
We're on the holodeck, you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. See?
Well, having done that, Mr. Hill.
Well, why don't we have a technobabble?
Let's do it. So, I suppose that gets to our first question. What is it?
What is a holodeck?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well...
We've seen a couple of shapes of them. We've seen the classic black room with yellow lines.
Mm-hmm.
We've also seen versions of it on Deep Space Nine with sort of a more pole and tube assembly on the walls. Mm-hmm. And Voyager's holodecks were also slightly different, as were Quark's holo suites. So there's a variety of models or product packagings, clearly, of holodecks. They're a widespread technology in use by many species. But what exactly defines it as a holodeck?
Interactive.
Interactions with...
It's the realism that really impressed in the early episodes of TNG.
Absolutely. There's verisimilitude, there's interaction, and there is a certain freedom to explore. The holodeck is a kind of giant sandbox that way, right? Depending on the program you've set up.
So we've got holograms, which is three-dimensional photonic objects.
Images of some kind,
yep.
yeah.
And backgrounds. And
projected backgrounds on the walls, as Data shows Riker in the very first episode of TNG.
Force fields. We have replication.
Also has certain points of gravity control.
Gravity manipulation, yeah. Those are kind of the four main components and of course, just the massive amount of software dedicated to
just processing
stories
that,
too,
right?
and the different programs you can choose from. And
yeah, and we
the
know
customizability, they're so impressive.
We know that takes an enormous amount of computing power because the accident which creates Moriarty, as I recall, momentarily uses an enormous amount of the ship's computational ability to create something that can honestly outwit Mr. Data.
And in Our Man Bashir, it was the only computer powerful enough and complex enough to house the consciousnesses of the away team. And that's
because it has something like a pattern buffer in it. So that's, in one sense, a lot of the technologies that the Federation or Earth was using before it acquired a holodeck were to become instrumental in the usage of this thing as an entertainment or investigative or a recreational or recreational device. So it's a tall order to see how we'd fulfill that anytime soon.
Though there's been some amount of a breakthrough in the news, I believe, quite recently.
Yeah, I think you sent me an article recently about a breakthrough in terms of holographic imaging, where the way in which holographs are fuzzy and choppy and
through the multiple 2D images stacked on top of one another.
And they really, they kind of appear quantized in a way. The application of an orthogonal image source, as far as now, please, anybody listening to this, correct me if and when I go wrong. I will likely do that in this explanation.
Please do. I'm going to open up the Facebook so you can do that.
That's right. Anybody who understands this better than us, and that's likely most people.
Or send us an email.
But yeah, there's a sort of an orthogonal source for another imposed set of images, and that diffraction and interference seems to have sharpened the images to a considerable degree. So that's looking toward that verisimilitude angle we're talking about. I still remember when I was a child, the first time I ever saw an actual 3D hologram. I was underneath the streets of Montreal. I must have been like, I don't know. This is a very vivid memory. When I was tiny, 4 or 5 years old. And we were touring around this place, and they were recreators sort of talking in character about life in historic Montreal. And it absolutely blew my mind that there was this disembodied head talking to me. I could not get over that. And so I remember a similar feeling the first time I saw Riker enter the holodeck to go find Data.
And
that
Riker's
door
just
just
impressed by
vanishes.
the scenery
Yes.
and the realism of it. So
Yeah. He's impressed by the degree to which they perfected it in on this ship, right?
seems to
Or
me
this
the
model
first,
of holodeck.
the first hologram that I ever saw was that video game that was in arcades, and you were a cowboy.
Yes.
And you could only point left or right.
Yeah.
And it was just about this split second. Someone would come to attack you, and you would have to shoot, kind of like a quick draw thing. But yeah, they were little holograms floating there in front of you.
Man, yes. I do remember that. Wow, that's reaching back into the archives for me.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the stiff challenge of this kind of technology,
Hard light.
yeah, is such that what we see in Enterprise, at least certainly in the first episode where a holodeck-like technology is even hinted at, is that somebody like Trip Tucker, who loves his high-tech stuff, does not even imagine having one of those on a starship. You know, it's not even something that's entered his mind that you would put on one.
No. In the Enterprise episode, I believe it's called Undetected.
Yeah, it could be.
1 second. Unexpected, I should say.
Oh yes,
Episode Unexpected.
yeah,
And they've
Different
encountered the Zerillians.
yes,
And they have a holodeck technology. And Trip gets pregnant in there.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of Trip pregnant jokes in that episode. It's it was a fun little outing.
Oh, yeah. 5th episode of the entire series. Trip's pregnant.
Uh,
He's getting right into it.
Felt like one of those sort of upstairs downstairs sort of British bedroom comedy type things in a way, almost
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So that's kind of the Federation encounters that kind of technology. But it's funny, it takes from that moment, skips over TOS era. They didn't have anything like that until
1974 episode of the animated series. Now, the animated series was wonderful in that it was able, because of the freedom from using real flesh and blood actors, to animate all sorts of things. That's where we get the Idoans from. The Kazinti show up in there. There's wonderful, gigantic, weird-looking spaceships and fungus creatures and giant Spocks and all sorts of stuff in that series that could never have been put on the screen in the early 1970s. So there's a 1974 episode of the animated series in which the holodeck actually makes a first appearance. Now, I don't recall whether it's actually called a holodeck, but there is a hallmark set of characteristics. There's verisimilitude, there's interactivity, there is that feeling of reality and substantiality that's implied by force fields or gravitational control or something, and there is wonder.
it's the greatest thing about the holodecks is the wonder.
Right? And then it doesn't show up again exactly until 87 when it shows up in the
One of the
Farpoint.
best things about the holodeck in the main holodeck episodes, and even in the little side things they do actually, is someone will program the whatever, like it's all customized. Usually they're programming something into it. It seems to be very easy. But once they do that, they don't really know what they're getting, and they always seem to be very surprised and happy by what they get. Like, oh, this is better than I thought it was going to be. Or like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there seems to be a whole play with the unforeseen in going into this interactive environment that relies on a computer that's got that sufficient capacity to produce novel situations or twists on the situation you've asked for that will continue to sort of delight.
prime example, Minuet.
Minuet. Indeed.
I mean, it's a little creepy. There's a lot of early Riker. A lot of the great early Riker moments are just a little bit creepy, but still has a good line there. Blondes and jazz seldom go together. That's a good one.
It's an interesting observation. Yeah, Minuet is a creation of the Binars, who...
True. Well, that is kind of what took that technology up a notch for the rest of that show and kind of allowed for things like Moriarty to happen, I think. Because...
I wonder if there wasn't something they left in the system, eh?
Because it always comes... Well, and I think they put it into ships going forward, too, because Voyager always had trouble with their holodecks.
Yeah.
In different ways, I suppose, but still it seemed to have the capability to do that. So my guess is, in ships built before the Enterprise D, that their holodeck technology wouldn't have those binar implementations, whatever they put in there. So they probably might not even be capable of creating a Moriarty, or you might have just gotten a cool holodeck program with a difficult premise that Data still would have beat. But
Frogger? What?
yeah, yeah, because that answers that question in a way. Like, why would they be on every ship if they're just constant danger? It's like, well, they probably weren't constant danger until the binars made the technology better.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to go backwards in that technology. They're like, no, this is better.
Clearly better. Some issues, but clearly better.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other side of
and then they'd put that on Voyager and things
what
like
we
that.
see particularly in Federation ships, we don't get a lot of looks at the inside of other ships in detail like we do Federation ships, but Federation ships at least seem to have a couple of design premises that are about specifically about morale and the ways that humans tend to like to do things. A lot of us in the last 12, 14 months have
wanted a holodeck.
And found ourselves pretty stir crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine going into space, even a ship that has the massive internal volume of the Enterprise?
As we test with people and longevity in space now. It's
Exactly,
how long
right?
Can you just stay up there?
And how long can you be in that sort of tin can, Major Tom, without...
Gilded as it may be in Star Trek.
Exactly. I mean, it's wall-to-wall carpeting, nice places to sit, good replicators, but eventually... you run out of Klingon opera to listen to, and you run out of, racquetball courts to go to, and Parisi squares, or whatever it is.
Do you run out of Klingon opera, though, Dave?
Worf doesn't run out of Klingon opera. Okay. He just starts at the top again.
Yes, exactly.
Melota! But,
one of the greats.
one of my personal favorites.
Back in the Negvar days.
Oh, we used to do a great job of Melota on Act 2.
Yeah, every act, the entire score.
Indeed. Well orchestrated. Tiny rodents running around to prove our point. It was wonderful.
We're just not as young as we used to be, and it takes
true.
a certain physical constitution to do that sort of
the
thing.
whole targ chasing scene is difficult if you don't have a certain dexterity.
Finding the targ to do the scene with.
Also true. Can't just stick twigs to a pig and chase it around. So
You remember that last targ prop finding mission?
Oh.
Won't be spoken of on this podcast.
Not on this podcast.
At least not for a while.
Just like time loops.
Things that aren't supposed to be mentioned yet get mentioned again and again.
Trash. How did we get to this point? Oh, right.
Through a time loop, Dave.
But the Federation seems to build its ships around, at least moving into the 24th century, is increasingly building its ships around taking account for leisure time and taking account for long-term deep space voyages that are going to keep people aboard ship for weeks, if not months at a time, even between stops.
Well-rested, happy crew are more effective.
Exactly. And it's specifically true of
for
humans.
every reason.
You can give a Klingon a hard piece of metal to sleep on and sing songs
not
with
if
him.
you're a Klingon, yes. You don't
And he'll just be fine. He'll be as irritated as he ever is when he gets
we
to wherever
don't
he's going to
soften
conquer.
our bodies.
Right?
Cushions and pillows.
Excellent.
Nor did we back in the Negvar days. And we're still paying for it.
That's true. Oh, my lumbar.
What's that in Klingon? Whoa! Transport alert.
What's that?
Oh, it's Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott?
Hello again, gentlemen.
I thought I blocked that transporter signal.
Can't get
After
around
last
my
time.
engineering.
Well, he got here on time this time.
See?
Good job on that chronomatrix, bud.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Things get better all the time. Ha!
There's Lesepians.
Tachi Lesepians.
Yes, Mr. Scott is actually here on time expected with 3 debate topics. We each have 3 debate topics in a new segment I like to call 3 times 3 equals 9. I call this segment Debate 9.
Nice.
Now, let me find us a better setting for Debate 9.
Why are we in the infirmary?
We are here on Deep Space Nine for Debate 9, and yes, we are in the infirmary because there are going to be 15-second one-against-one kind of back and forth, and we're in the infirmary in case of any sick burns.
Ooh, sick burns.
All right. So,
All right.
in this segment, there will be 1 debate master and 2 debaters, and we'll rotate that around.
Check.
And we'll have 30, you'll have 30 seconds each, and then we'll do it at the end of that. It'll be 15 seconds to kind of go back and forth to convince the debate master that your position is in fact correct.
Okay.
Good?
I'm convinced.
Good.
Okay. So, I guess I shall go first.
Okay.
So, as we both all know, not both, as we all know.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. In the episode, I don't know what it's called, but where Data goes and meets old man Noonien Sung, you know what I'm saying?
Isn't that...
I think it might be
Brothers.
called Brothers.
Is that Brothers?
That might be Brothers.
I think it's
Oh,
brothers.
that's
Family.
Brothers.
It's hard to
No, it's
Can't
not family.
resolve.
It's definitely not family. Is it Brothers?
That's Brothers.
Oh, I'm going to delete all that. Okay, in the episode Brothers, Data and Lore are there with their father, Noonien Sung.
Uh-huh.
And Data proclaims that he feels, insuperior to Lore. He's less perfect than Lore, he says. And Noonien says, no, Data, you're not less perfect than Lore. And Data becomes kind of obsessed with that. And he's just like, I'm not less perfect than Lore. I'm not less perfect than Lore.
I'm not insuperior to lore.
And I believe he says less perfect. But yes, you're not looking good to win this debate here, Scott. So be it resolved that Data is in fact less perfect than Lore. Dave, you will be debating for this topic.
So I'm arguing that Data is in fact
Less perfect than
inferior
Lore.
to lore.
Less perfect than Lore.
Okay.
Scott, you will be debating that the opposite. Dave, you are up first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay, you begin as soon as you hear the timer start.
Okay. Is that the timer?
I believe I've forgotten to turn it on. So, I believe you will hear a timer this time. So if you're still ready to form your argument, I believe I am ready with my timer technology.
Okay. I'll go. Is your timer ready? The Latin perficere is defined as to make whole or to make complete. When Noonien Sung created Lore, he made him complete, with circuits offering him basic emotional responses. When Data was created later after the objections of the colonists, he omitted the
Your time is
piece.
Data is...
up. Hold on. You have to have a timer as well. Nice try.
I don't think I need 30 seconds to rebut that.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Wow, here we go.
Data is clearly more perfect than Lore. We need only look at their head-to-head matchups, in which case Data is pretty much undefeated, I believe. Let's check. Data Lore? Lore wound up floating through space for 2 years. Brothers, his own father told him, you're not less perfect. Descent, Lore brought the Borg for his battle and still took the L. Data is clearly the superior brother.
Wow, well timed as well. Now there will be 15 seconds of back and forth debate starting when you hear the timer start.
I'd like to revisit the fact that Data is apparently inferior to Lore.
I'd like to revisit that too. Say that
I think
it's true.
the term you maybe have been looking for was inferior. Debate master.
And he is, insofar as he always needs the help of his Starfleet companions to defeat Lore. Lore gets him every time.
That would have been a good argument to bring up during your debate.
For one thing, this is science fiction, so Insuperior is just creative and awesome. What podcast do you guys think you're on? Two good, very good arguments. I thought Dave was going to have it with the making one whole, all faults and all argument. But I think Scott came in with the one thing that could actually defeat that idea of being less perfect than Lore with they have gone head to head a few times, and would not the more perfect being come out victorious in those meetings. And Data did again and again with help, but not so much in a lot of those episodes. It was often just kind of Data versus Lore in a lot of those situations. And I would agree with you, Dave, that Lore is a more complete being, or at least in what we see it as being representative of what a human is. But who's to say if that's more perfect? And the victories that Data has over Lore, I think, would kind of call that into question, and going to give that one to Scott.
Lovely.
Mr. Scott takes the opening debate 9.
Even with the Latin involved.
The Latin was impressive, and
Well,
as was the argument, but
For Mr. Data's sake, I'm glad anyway.
I was putting Dave in a situation there. I knew you didn't want to debate against Data, so it was a bit of a shenanigans on my part. Mr. Scott, why don't you go next?
Okay, I too have a question that I'm going to put Dave on the spot.
Oh my.
Oh my. 2 out of the gate. Here we go.
All right. Be it resolved that Esri-Dax is superior to Jadzia-Dax.
Oh my. Wait, don't hit that time until you tell me who's for who.
Dave is going to be for this argument because I think it's a long shot, and I had expected him to go 9-0, or I guess 6-0 in our debates here.
My. A lot of faith in Dave here.
Ooh, disappointment out of the gate.
I'm going to give Dave a moment to gather his thoughts because that's a statement that needs some planning.
Yeah.
All right, the moment's up. Here comes your 30 seconds.
Esri was not ready to be a joint trill. The challenge for Esri-Dax, as opposed to Jadzia, who had worked her whole life for it, was to become joined in a successful way. And what we see her do is rise to an occasion mountains higher than even Jadzia's first exclusion and having to return to the Trill Academy. Not that she isn't great in her own right. I yield the remainder of my time.
Oh, power move even at the end. Davin, you have to argue against the motion that Esri-Dax is superior to Jadzia.
Like Dave said, Jadzia trained her entire life to be a joined trill. As Garrick said, Jadzia owned herself. Not just herself, but owned every symbiote that that the Dax symbiote was before Jadzia. Jadzia was the culmination of those symbiotes, the way no other symbiote had been that we've seen. Whereas Esri was very insecure in her handling of the symbiosis.
Strong counterpoint. Let's see what you have head to head.
So who could have picked up from Jadzia?
Nobody.
One.
That's why I've
That's
just won
why
this
Esri's
debate.
great. That's why Esri steps into those shoes, doubts herself,
But
and
did
still
she?
rises to the
But
challenge.
did she?
She does.
Jadzia.
Time's up. So this was intentionally designed as a bit of a trap question. I came up with it, and then I spent some time thinking, how can one make an argument for Esri, who's clearly an inferior character?
Oh, wow.
Very little time to develop. Very little. There's. We don't see a lot of Esri compared to Jadzia.
And Jadzia is amazing.
Jadzia is amazing.
No question.
Domjot and hanging out with guys
Tongo
before
for
breakfast.
days.
So I hit on a lot the same idea that you had, Dave, in that she doesn't get very much time. But if you bring in some of the novels and some of the sort of B-roll stuff for Deep Space Nine, which continues for a long time afterwards, Ezri does quite well for herself. She rises to be a captain. She really comes into her own. And I like, too, the argument that she was simply not ready, and that she was... we saw growth with her, perhaps, in a different way than we saw with Jadzia. Now, Jadzia arrives fully formed, addresses...
Not true.
Nearly. Addresses with Kira the underrepresentation that TNG was hammered on for a very long time. Whereas Ezri, she comes in as a counselor. She comes in very unsure of herself.
Counselor on this show.
Pardon. Very unsure of herself and takes a while to sort of get her act together. I did like the appeal to authority to bring Garrick into it. Could have also included the fact that Garrick spent some time with Ezri specifically to tell her to get her act together. Was clearly a favorite of Jadzia. So I'm gonna give this one to Dave. With the caveat that this was a difficult point, and I'm giving him a couple of handicap points.
Oh, handicapped Dave.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
of course you're going to think he's going to go 6-0 with handicaps.
Okay, so I think it's my question now, right?
Yes.
All right. I will be the
Debate master.
Debate locutor.
I am the locutor. Okay, so this is from a Klingon listener, long-time listener, first-time debater.
Okay.
Conquest.
Yeah.
Be it resolved.
Yeah.
Conquest is the most effective space foreign policy. Scott, you'll be arguing for this. Davin, you're arguing against.
Done well, Conquest will leave you with nobody to stand up against you. If Conquest is failing, it's because you are not doing it properly. Done correctly, there will be no one left. So it's hard to beat that as far as a strategy.
You yielding the rest of your
That's
time?
all I got to say about that.
That's all I got to
All
say.
right, that's all he's got to say about that.
Well, I'm going to use Scott's time.
I was just like, so now do we just wait the timer out? What do we do now?
Okay.
All right, you ready? Go.
If Conquest was truly the best space foreign policy, then the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire, the Cardassian Empire would all be bigger than the Federation. But are they? No, the Federation is bigger than all three of those combined, or at least close. Those empires don't get the benefit of the different cultures and the differences, the IDIC of those different cultures.
Nicely timed. Nicely timed. And now for our 15-second free-for-brawl.
IDIC, man, this is a Star Trek podcast. The Federation is huge.
Of course, if you're going to appeal that way, the reason that the Klingons, Cardassians, and Romulans aren't bigger is because they aren't good enough at what they're trying to do.
Because they're creating enemies and not allies. Allies
Crush
are
your enemies,
powerful.
you don't have to worry about your enemies.
All right. That was a very strong opening. Going for the sort of hatchet guy efficacy quest, sort of, touring the facility and picking up slack sort of opening was nice. I appreciated the ethical turn we took into the sort of essential beating heart of Vulcan ethics there as they lay the foundation for the Federation's foreign policy. Oh, this is hard. Ultimately, the wide-reaching implications of diplomacy, I think, do win the day. But it was awfully close.
We are a point up.
All right, back around to you, sir.
Okay. So, be it resolved that Commander Edgington is in fact a great hero. Arguing for this, Scott. Arguing against this, Dave. Are you ready, Scott?
Yes. For someone to be a hero, they need to be looked up to. And for the fatal efforts of the Maquis, I can't think of a better leader than Commander Eddington. Went down with the cause. He did everything that he possibly could. He even went into the belly of the beast. And in the end, he paid the ultimate price and went down as a martyr. If that's not a hero, I don't know what is.
The martyr is the hero. Interesting. Certainly a martyr amongst Maquis. Like,
Perspective is everything. You're not going to be a hero to everybody.
Chakotay's ship was called the Valjean.
To those, you're going to be a hero. Oh, sorry, I'm trying. I'm
Running
I
over
cheating.
believe
time
that's
here a little bit,
Chakotay's
yeah.
ship and not Eddington's ship. Maybe it was Eddington's ship, but I think Chakotay's ship.
No,
was
Valjean was the one in the
Yeah.
first episode of
Yeah.
Voyager, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, that's a nod to Eddington, right? Okay, should be supporting Scott's argument. Here, you ready, Dave?
Yeah. The Valjean itself
Hold
is
on.
the Valjean itself is a nod to the kind of complex which made Eddington seem heroic, but his charisma merely allowed him to lead people into the kind of delusional complex he actually perpetuated over his whole life, running headlong into the kind of windmill of the Federation in order to satisfy his own desire to beat his essential enemy, his Javert, in Cisco.
So, in fact, his motivations were selfish and not for the cause. Interesting. Okay, we have 15 seconds to settle that.
I feel like I took the loss last time based on a very Federation-centric point of view, and I feel that that was also a very Federation-centric argument that we just heard.
Not that the Maquis doesn't have its merits, and there are interesting ones to be had, but his own behavior
The
dooms
timer
him.
went off.
I like the way it ends.
That was a tough one, actually. I mean, I buy Dave's argument that perhaps the motivations were selfish because he is obsessed with French melodrama.
Yep. I almost used the word Hugo 9 at one point. that might not help me.
But the way I see Scott's argument was, who are you asking that question to? Are you asking
Yeah.
a Federation officer if Commander Eddington is a hero, or are you asking a settler in the Cardassian zone?
I think you
Commander
get very
Cisco
different
is going to
answers.
give you a very different answer than one of the displaced settlers.
And I didn't make
Trade
that
the
clear.
uniform.
I didn't make that clear whose perspective that was supposed to be from.
And that's fair.
So I
That's part
think
of the question.
by default, I have to give it to Scott because there are certainly people out there who would consider Chakotay's ship is called the Valjean.
No, it's a beautifully
Is
argued
that not
point.
a heroic figure?
Beautifully argued point.
Plus, he's Canadian.
It's Commander Eddington.
Yes, he's the only Canadian character we ever got.
He has a lucky loony.
Lucky loony. His family's lucky loony. Yeah, man. Okay, that was a tough one though. Wow, this is a
That was good.
segment. I like this. All right. Do you keep track of everybody's score, Scott?
Yep.
Scott has a pen.
I came with a pen and
He's
paper last time.
organized.
I told you that I
As
come
told us the
prepared.
He
entire
comes
run
prepared.
so
I got
far.
an entire pad of paper this time, so
We
I
call
can
him
keep track of our 9 debates.
We call him Stationary Scott.
Literally have a stub with scribbles on it in two
Looks like
different
it came
things
right from
because
the
I
track.
don't even have it. It's just up here in the old noggin ledger.
I forgot all my writing utensils. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's get
Okay.
away from Maquis traders and arguing for lore.
You mean Maquis heroes? Didn't you just make that argument?
Correction.
Reversing points.
The Machiavel.
This is inspired by a recent episode of yours. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
you touched on this.
Okay.
Star Trek doesn't always do a really good job of the horny side of things, the sexual side of things. And you were actually quite against
Paging Angel
some of Riker's
Riker's immediate
Exploits.
smiles sometimes
Oh my
can be a
God.
bit questionable.
It's actually an interesting thing because if you watch, like I think all of us did, and probably many listeners did, you watch TNG as a young person.
Oh, sure.
You don't pick up on that at all. You rewatch it in Riker.
No, you're just like, he's interested in this lady, whatever.
Every
But-
sentence he ends with could be, without your pants. Pretty much.
No, I love his scene with Guy. It's just like, your eyes are just stars.
Like, shut up.
Shut up, kid.
And so that's not always handled especially well within Star Trek. Another thing Star Trek traditionally tends to struggle with is when characters are intentionally trying to be funny. The humor side doesn't always work perfectly. And so somebody's going to have to argue for one of these. And I know, Davin, you were against Riker's exploits in the last episode. So, Dave, be it resolved that horny Trek...
This is going to get reversed on me.
That horny Trek is superior to funny Trek.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Ready?
Dave's arguing for horny?
Dave's arguing for horny because you were clearly against this in a recent episode.
Oh,
No, jeez.
Pepe Le Pew is showing up, it sounds like.
he's been canceled. Shit.
Your 30 seconds starts now.
Minuet. The horny side of Star Trek is the greater side of Star Trek because it shows the kind of wonderful discovery that's involved in finding strange new worlds and civilizations in Star Trek, but in a way that also appeals to the sort of basic biological urges of what we are as animal beings. And, you know, Minuet. I'm good.
Okay. Davin, you are arguing against the fact that horny Trek is superior to funny Trek.
I'm just going to come at this unconventionally and just list off hilarious episodes of Star Trek. Take me out to the Holosuite. Every Ferengi episode in Deep Space Nine.
Not the cross-dressing one.
That's not his
The
argument.
humor of Star Trek is what makes Star Trek. O'Brien and Bashir. And Phlox in Enterprise. Tuvok's hilarious business in Voyager. I'll get you in the 15-second showdown.
Oh, you wait.
All right, let's hear it.
I'd argue the humor of Star Trek is irony rather than direct humor.
I would
Moments
argue-
of direct humor are often shown as falling flat.
I would argue the humor in Star Trek is the clash in the differences of the IDIC. It's the clash of these different cultures, these different personalities.
Both of you were playing with a bit of a short deck on this one.
I never play with a full deck.
I try to. I run a fair poker match.
The wonderful discovery line is, I could see Riker's eyebrow going up at that.
Kirk would love it.
Kirk's exploits is overrated.
In 30 seconds, I will say that Davin came up with a lot more, like, legitimately funny moments than I would have expected. Ferengi definitely have their moments. O'Brien and Bashir, pretty good together.
Sure.
The argument about they tend to rely on irony instead of anything else, I think, is undercut by the fact that we spent an entire episode with Data on the Holodeck trying to learn how to be a stand-up comic with some forgotten loser stand-up from the 80s.
Whoa.
Drenched in irony. Drenched
That was
in
Saturday
irony.
Night Live alum.
What was his
Beautiful.
name?
That was oh, I got this.
Some
I got
forgotten
this.
guy, yeah.
The Bolian.
The bowling guy.
I'm gonna give the point to Davin.
Wow.
Oh, down
I
the
will
flames.
think of that comedian's name.
Here we go. This one is from one of our Breen listeners.
Oh no.
What?
Do we get a Vorta to translate?
Oh no, he's been thoroughly translated. Otherwise, the question would just go.
Thank
And that, I mean, you can do it now, but okay.
Pop out a new
So,
Wayoon.
this question
What's the
is:
last one?
be it resolved that Andorra is not cold enough. Davin, you'll be arguing for this. Go for it.
Look, it's a little frigid on Andor. No question. But the Andorian people are a proud warrior people. They don't get the credit that the Klingons do or the Jem'Hadar do. But the Andorians are a somewhat militaristic, very honor-bound. They have the rituals with the spiky thing where he lost the thing in Enterprise, he lost his antenna. They would love a planet that challenged them more and made them sterner and harder to fight the Vulcan Scourge. Or, you know, once Confederation...
Oh, your time is
Scourge
done.
of 30 seconds.
All right.
Can I make sure that I understand?
Yes.
So the statement is Andorra is not cold enough.
It's not
you have-
sufficient.
you
He's
have-
arguing for
I
it.
argue that it's not cold enough.
Yeah. You're arguing that it is cold enough.
Having beamed around space-time extensively, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that that bloody planet is cold enough.
Okay, I give it to him. Concede.
What could beat that appeal to personal experience, eh?
We're at the end of a Canadian winter. I've had enough of cold. Scott wins. Point Scott. Let's move on.
I'll agree to that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
What's your question?
Fair enough. Our first concession on Debate 9.
That was pulled from the depths because I did not know what I would say.
That was very creative.
Okay.
Oh.
Now, we often make light of the episode Threshold on Voyager. I think there were some great highlights in that episode and some questionable moments as well. But be it resolved that Catherine Janeway and Tom Paris are worse parents than Worf. Dave, you will be arguing for this.
Okay.
Scott, you will be arguing against.
Okay, so I'm arguing they're worse parents than Worf.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, all right. From the depths of their lizard brains, these two former Starfleet creatures abandoned their progeny to start a whole new idiotic species on planet wherever the hell that was. I don't remember the name. Worf sent his son to Earth to live with his own parents. His mother makes excellent roquette blood pie. That's not shabby. It's not an easy parenting decision to make, but way better than clutching and cleaving.
Clutching and cleaving. Scott.
I think I might be on record as saying that it's one of my least favorite episodes. And I don't know that I've made it through it more than once.
10 seconds, Scott.
I don't know that I can make any argument for Janeway in Paris because I don't even watch to the end of that episode. To me, it doesn't even exist.
Wow.
So that's not a strong argument. I guess this is another concession.
So the non-existence of the parent making it better than a bad parent.
15 seconds of Dave embarrassing Scott. Run out of time there, Dave.
It's
15 seconds of laughing at that
It's
argument is
just
probably pretty good.
just 10 seconds of a lizard going like testing the air.
Dave wins several times. Can I give you Dave 2 points for that one? No.
He might need
Dave
it,
wins.
actually. He's
I'm
way
way
behind.
behind.
Dave wins.
Oh my god. All right. So it's me again?
No, it's me.
Nope.
Oh, it's you
Scott.
again. Oh, great. All right, here we go.
Okay, in 2 of the Star Trek movies, Star Trek 2 and in First Contact, we get explicit and direct allusions to Moby Dick.
Right.
So Ricardo Montalban gets to spend some time playing Ahab, and a little later, Captain Picard gets to spend some time playing Ahab. Both excellent actors. Be it resolved that Ricardo Montalban makes a superior Ahab to Patrick Stewart. Davin, you will be arguing for this, because I know Dave, it's his favorite character. I don't want him arguing against Picard.
Oh, I wanted to argue for Khan. Khan was legitimately wronged. Was Ahab legitimately wronged by the whale that injured him? You could argue yes. He was injured by this whale. I mean, he was hunting the whale. That's irrelevant. He was injured by this whale. Worse
Bit his
than this
leg off.
whale injured him. Exactly. He bit his leg off. He was abandoned on that planet by Kirk. Khan was legitimately wrong. Legitimate to be angry. He was unfrozen in a time that wasn't his own.
Dave, you're arguing against the proposition that Khan makes a superior Ahab to Picard.
Cool.
You have 30 seconds.
While Khan's wounds were practical and
Hold
material.
up. Timer.
Go now.
Go.
Khan's wounds were practical and material. Picard's wounds, while physical and in a certain sense material, were deep and spiritual in a level that violated his very self. The ego that he built over his whole life, dismantled and brutalized by the Borg. That is the white whale he hunts. He hunts the loss that hounds him every day and makes him dream of it at night.
Head to head for 15 seconds.
This is an argument
This
about
far
Ahab
and
his
no
whale.
farther!
Picard's whale is a hypothetical. Khan's whale,
Picard's
he
whale
knows
is
what
the
his white whale
Borg.
is. It's Kirk. He is Ahab, or Kirk is Ahab.
Oh, the Borg is a great
Khan is Ahab, Kirk is the whale.
idiot thing.
He has his enemy.
The legit wound is... I don't know that that's the tack I would have taken here. Picard, I think, has a very strong argument that he has a legitimate wound. I think we may have spent an hour or more debating that very recently on this very podcast. Khan does have a legitimate wound. He does have a specific target, but so does Picard. And the Borg, as an entity, are a perfectly good stand-in. He also spent some time in that movie specifically talking about how the Borg Queen was the focus of that malevolent force.
Testify.
This is a clear point for Dave.
From hell's heart I stab at thee.
I'll say too, Picard's Ahab
That sounds like
speech-
Ahab, doesn't it?
Picard's Ahab speech was a direct quote, whereas Khan was a paraphrase. Whether that's stronger...
The embodiment, you could say.
Yeah, he applied it to himself better. That could have been a pretty strong argument to take.
That's a lovely point. All right. Now, for my final topic.
What's up? Hold on, before you do that,
final
where's the
topic.
score?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's add it up. Scott for 1, Dave for 1, Davin for 1. 1-1-1 after the first round. Scott over Dave, Davin over Dave.
2-2-1.
Scott over Davin,
Ooh, 3-2-1.
3-2-1.
Dave over Scott,
3-2-2.
Dave over Davin.
3-2-3.
3-2-3.
Which means this is...
I need to win this one
Ooh.
This is for all the marbles, is
to make it
not?
a 3-3-3.
For all the marbles.
No,
or
you
a
and I
three-way
are the
tie.
threes. Are they
No,
not?
you
No,
and
we're
Dave
the
are the
threes.
threes.
This could make it a three-way tie.
Oh, this is for the...
Or the win.
Oh, the win.
All right.
Luckily, Scott's come with extra questions if we have a three-way tie.
If I'm in that debate, that's not very fair.
True.
Now, this final question comes back around to a difficult period of Federation history at the midst of the Dominion War, when Ben Sisko was betrayed, humiliated by Eddington. In response, at a later date, for a couple of missiles heading through space, Benjamin Sisko released photon torpedoes containing, was it trilithium, I think, or tricobalt? I forget which one.
Tricobalt warheads.
Tricobalt warheads over Quetal Prime and another planet. Be it resolved, the bombing of Quetal Prime was a war crime, and Ben Sisko should be tried in absentia. Scott, you'll be arguing for this. And again, I won't put you against your own captain, you'll be arguing against this now.
Completely destroying an entire planet's ecosystem would be several orders of magnitude worse than salting an enemy's land after you take it, which is a definition war crime. Clearly, this is a war crime on a much greater scale, and the fact that he is absent should have no bearing whatsoever on whether this is tried before a tribunal.
Oh. Excellence in elocution.
It was made very clear that they weren't destroying the ecosystem. It was only making it uninhabitable for a humanoid life. To get rid of the Maquis. The plants, the bugs, they're all fine. Ben Sisko is in the position he's in, at that station at that time, because he's the man who gets things done. He did something that seems questionable, but when you see the benefits it had based on its effect, just getting rid of the humanoid life,
Okay.
Do I get a rebut for 15
Yeah, we got
seconds?
15 seconds.
We've got 15 seconds to go at each other.
This isn't a war crime. Is not what you do to the plants, it's what you do to the people, and that was not targeted at the plants. It wasn't done for the animals. It was done
The
against
people
the
he
Maquis.
gave plenty of time to get away, and he knew they had plenty of ships to achieve this goal.
Pretty sorry argument that they had it coming.
This is
didn't say
this is very interesting because I mean, you took this head on, Scott, and you said, "Yep, clearly, this is rendering life impossible for humans on this planet. That's a war crime."
He said destroy the ecosystem, which I would have been disgusted with myself, but that's not what he did.
Now, there's a fair point. Part of this question was about trying in absentia, and you did refer to that. One of the things that I liked about your argument, Davin, was you reframed the question to say that what's happening here is in a moment of sort of, it's in extremis. It's a situation in a certain sense of exception. That's what you're arguing anyway, whether we agree with it or not. And that this, in a certain sense, justifies Cisco, who's made a reputation on these sorts of acts, in doing this.
Sometimes the ends do justify.
Now, the thing you didn't touch
entire point of war crimes is exactly against that
argument. He does make a good point there. I
The
mean,
bugs and the plants are fine.
The thing you didn't touch on was whether he should be tried in absentia.
Yeah.
And while your argument would, I think, be an excellent one to make in a court, ultimately, Scott did make an argument about why he should be tried in absentia, and in that case, takes the point.
Scott wins the first edition of Debate 9.
Mr. Scott is going to take his trophy and beam the heck out of here so you guys can deal with your wounds.
Lick our wounds on the way
Dave,
back
maybe
to
you
the
should help me
infirmary.
disconnect and block that transporter signal this time. It didn't work last time.
I'm dealing with some sick burns over here.
That's why we're in the infirmary. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Scott.
Pleasure, gents.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Beaming out.
So, the
early days of TNG is where we
that's where we
we're
got
talking there. We'll loop back to that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Another kind of step forward from Minuet, because they do a lot of early season stuff with the technology and the capabilities of the holodeck. Of course, kind of culminating in Moriarty.
Sure.
But before that, there's the big goodbye.
Ah.
It's why we were talking like we were in the Dixon Hill novel earlier.
Yeah, see?
What do you think, Dix? I'm going to call Dave Dix for the rest of this episode. It's like Picard, but I'm not Dixon Hill. I just look like him. Like, whatever, Dix.
Then he forgets he's talking to a hologram.
Now, I would have to kind of bring up the whole season list of episodes to say this for certain, but The Big Goodbye may be my favorite episode of season 1. The acting in it is top-notch. It has an interesting premise where it's exploring the consciousness of the people created in the holodeck for the first time, where they believe they're real, and when you're in their world, with the problem that went wrong and safety protocols going off and whatnot, then it's real to you too. Great guest actors. Another Dick Miller appearance.
Oh yeah,
playing
that's right.
Dick Miller, as he does in everything. I don't even care. So he even talks about baseball again, and every time he's in a Star Trek episode, he manages to talk about baseball. Cleveland, they got no pitches. They never got no pitches. He's just selling like paper on the streets, but he's pretty funny. He looks at Data and he's like, "Where is he from?" It's like, "Well, I was constructed on a planet." Data. He's from South America. He's like, "Oh."
I love it later. He goes, "I am from South America."
Yeah. The cop comes up. It's just like, "Where's he from?" He's like, Dick Miller. He's just like, "He's from South America. Can't you tell?" Same character and everything.
Oh man,
I love Dick Miller.
Well, one of the things that I found really interesting in that episode particularly, and you're right, it does kind of hold forth in the rest of that sort of era of Star Trek, is the question of the consciousness of the hologram. Because these are developed, organized, and implemented by a a sophisticated computer which can multiply support a number of sophisticated AIs. These aren't just, your sort of video game RPG person you can interact with that has 4 pieces of dialogue.
No, these things all have to be able to respond as the character should in real time. Like the complexity to develop, like you have to build some manner of a consciousness for it to do, not necessarily consciousness, but close.
But I'd assume the holodeck then must have personalities modeled.
Yeah.
At least simulated modeled personalities it can mix and match from and just grab traits and then throw them together.
And then maybe amp little dials up and down. Probably 1,000 of them, and they all go to like 10,000 or something. Like a lot of variability.
This one goes to 11.
They would go to 11.
But yeah,
that's
I think
technology.
You've got that whole complex of things that are running, and each of those has to, as you say, not just look like a kind of heroism, but have the verisimilitude of personality.
And that episode also foreshadows the dangers of the holodeck. Whereas it's, I believe, the first one where the safety protocols do go off.
I think
and
so,
their resident history expert who Picard wants to like hang out with, which is pretty funny. He never has to hang out with anybody. And
yeah, it's true.
They're really pushing the Beverly and Picard romance in that first season. She's I would love to go to the holodeck with you, Jean-Luc. He's just like, fantastic, Beverly. And that history man. Get the history man. He should come with us as well. That would be great. I would love to hang out with the history man.
Notable that we never see him again in the series.
No.
He hangs out with Jean-Luc Picard.
He almost dies, and he gets away from Jean-Luc
I'm requesting a transfer.
Exactly.
Send me to a nice Oberth class ship. Leave me out of it.
100%. Ask for a transfer.
Here, there's a nice Dr. Galen
and
I
then
can go work
Picard
with.
never has to hang out with anybody ever again.
It's true.
He's like, this is why I don't have friends, Beverly. Except for you.
What was his name? Timmy the historian? I forget.
You remember that what happened to Lieutenant Timmy?
Capital fellow. Sorry about the shooting.
He was a history man.
Now he's history.
Oh, Picard. He tried. He really tried to make a friend.
He really did.
That's how he chooses his friends. So like, that guy knows a lot about history. Believe I should befriend this fellow.
Commence friendship protocol.
You there, Lieutenant. What do you know about archaeology? Not a lot, sir. Just very good, very good.
Carry on.
Good work, Lieutenant. Yeah, and then there's the booby trap, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Where...
The minuet? I apologize.
Oh, well, I guess that's where Geordi learned this, from Riker and Minuet.
True enough. Oh, yeah.
But yes, it takes that idea a little further, I suppose, and just the one where Geordi falls for the hologram of Leah Brahms.
Leah Brahms.
And it's awkward.
It's such... I mean... And that's...
Because I love Geordi, and sometimes he's just so weird and awkward.
Well, and I think for him, the line between high technology and the self is different than for a lot of his colleagues. On the one hand, there's Data, who's just entirely made of technology. And on the other hand, there's, say Picard, who's got an artificial heart, or all the way down to sort of Riker, who just appears to be all flesh.
100%.
He certainly loves all flesh. But...
Riker.
Oh,
100% red-blooded Riker there,
that's
Dave.
pretty much it. Good old Alaskan Riker.
Not a drop more, not a drop less.
100% Riker.
Spaceman.
There's Geordi's sensibility about how technology and sort of natural organic forms interact, I think is a bit different than other people's. But you're right, he kind of goes head over heels for this person who loves and made what he loves.
Be very receptive to him as well.
Right?
It's programmed for a productive working relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Which they point out to him. Somebody points out to him, but didn't you program her to like you? He's like, well...
Shut up. And that's another theme about the holodeck that comes up. It has an addictive quality to it. And it has an immersive quality that, even if not addictive, can be discombobulating to people's sort of ethical sensibilities.
Well, and you know what it also does, that episode, is and they do it again in Voyager, and maybe at other times too, is they're using again that complexity of that holodeck technology that allowed them to store consciousnesses in Armand Bashir and create things like Moriarty. Is they use the holodeck to solve problems.
Yes.
Not their panels on the bridge, which you'd think would have all the stuff they need. Like, in the the most powerful and capable computers, you'd think they'd be on the bridge, but no, they're in the holodeck. It would seem.
And when they really want to roll their sleeves up and get into something, they go into the holodeck too.
Yeah, they need like a personality to help to help the equation. It's like the math
Well, you think
isn't
about,
good enough. You can't just say like they do all the time. Computer, what is this?
Well, Paris and Kim trying to get the slipstream calculations right, run endless drills in the holodeck, right?
Well, the one I was thinking of was Chromaset. But yeah, they create an expert in a field on the holodeck.
Yeah.
Just by programming the known information about that person and then some personality traits. Just stereotypical Cardassian ones, but he's a great character, though.
He's interesting.
I like Chromaset.
Enjoyed him.
But no, that wasn't even the example I was trying to think of, I don't think.
Well, there's a number. I mean, there's a great TNG episodes with the creatures coming out of subspace and kidnapping people, when they cut off, reattach Riker's arm, and they do stuff to Worf. And Troy takes them to the holodeck to try and engage in a shared recollection experience. And they end up constructing the table on which they were restrained and the noises of the room around them, the clicking and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And that has a really visceral reaction on the characters in that space.
It does.
Because it brings them back to the reality of their own experience in a way that they couldn't honestly really remember.
No, the handle was different.
Yeah, but they know these things, right? They've got it somewhere in their subconscious.
That was a creepy scene, actually. That's a really good scene.
It's a great... Oh, it's really... that's kind of a horrific episode. But in a really excellent sense, right? It's good. It's sort of good sci-fi horror. Because these things are just completely merciless, whatever the heck they are.
Well, yeah, I think you were kind of leading to the issues of addiction that people...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Of course, we know of a crew member who is particularly susceptible to such a thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Reginald Barclay.
Our dear friend Reg.
Who had a peculiarly bad case of holo addiction.
Yes, because he was also addicted to creating characters out of his coworkers.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little weird.
Well, and,
I mean, fair ball, it's his personal time, but it's just,
Yeah, I can see it being a kind of
weird.
escapist release. And that certainly seems to be how he uses it. But the ways and, his ability to cope without constantly returning there is what ends up becoming an issue, right?
Yeah, that's where they find out. It's just like, you're racking up like 5 hours of holodeck time a day here, bud.
Yeah. And it's
like, no, I'm using it to solve problems, he says. He says that's what his reason. He's like, I have an engineering in there, and I...
Yeah. And, maybe at one point he even did.
Like, you coming up with anything?
Yeah. Not at this point, though. At this point, he is in full-fledged sort of fantasy flight mode.
Three Musketeers.
Yeah, he's gone right off into a land of sort of wish fulfillment and a place where the kinds of wounds that his personality exhibits, the difficulty interacting with others, his low confidence, his low self-esteem and self-image, his fear of being mocked and of failing publicly, all of those things he can indulge in ways that neutralize them, that are satisfying to him, because, again, of that verisimilitude of the environment.
Which he doesn't necessarily handle the best.
No.
Because it's like he's not like he's creating just social situations that he can control. Because that's what he's missing.
Yes. And ones in which he feels confident and empowered, right?
When he does that and he creates like 10 forward, it's so Riker will come up to him and he can like beat the crap out of Riker,
Yeah. There's
you think he's doing the right thing, which is just trying to develop his social skills in an artificial setting he can control.
Yeah.
but he's not. He's just like getting petty revenges and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that there's a way in which that tips. Yeah, he's tipped over from the kind of possibly therapeutic aspects of a holodeck into the escapist, addictive, ultimately self-punishing aspects of the holodeck for himself, really, because he's not helping himself, and he's sort of affirming his worst fears outside of the holodeck whenever he's not, whenever he's there outside it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he's the character that we see who has the most problem with holodecks over the course of Star Trek. I mean, there's a great Jeffrey
Well, unless
Combs.
you count about the Doctor and his family. He has a bit of difficulties with the old fam at home.
Yeah.
Some difficulties there.
Yeah, that's
the Doctor
fair.
has his own particular holodeck difficulty. But again, the ending of that Krelmoset one is really good, too.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, so the captain's going to shut me down, is she, Doctor? He's like, she's left it up to me. Krelmoset's like, I predict a long working relationship and effective relationship between us, Doctor.
He's got to cut it off.
He just kind of glares at him. He's just like, I'm actually disappointed that you think that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And then he says, computer. Like, he was feeling bad about it, but when Krell says that to him, actually don't like you very much, computer.
Yeah. And it's a different
And
thing
delete.
for a hologram to turn off and delete another hologram.
Yeah,
Sense, right?
it was harder for him.
Yeah.
And another scientist that he respected, at least in his field, for a while.
Sure. Certainly respected his intelligence and his abilities, if not his methods and practices. Yeah, I can imagine becoming pretty hooked on a holodeck myself,
Oh, it would be fun.
I
would basically just live in Star Trek, though, which is the ironic part.
I
need Star Trek to get a holodeck, but if I had a holodeck, I would just live in Star Trek. So,
well, it's interesting, right? Because I think we see our own culture or our own societies now grappling with the challenge of the compelling nature of virtualities, right? Mm-hmm. Of these devices we've got in front of us that help organize and
phone and video
and run
addiction,
our lives,
and video
right?
game addiction.
Sure.
It would definitely be next level that.
Yeah, I mean, God, how many YouTube videos do we all watch every day? I mean, that's got our eyeballs. It's not like these things don't operate a dopamine switch in our heads, right? I can only imagine the dopamine switch that's operated by a holodeck is profound.
It's got to be one of the counselor's main jobs on a starship, really. It's just tempering people's
85% holo addiction,
Yeah.
15% trauma.
Yes. Depending on the ship, the ratio changes.
The Defiant doesn't have a holodeck. It's all trauma.
It's all trauma. And don't sit in Worf's seat.
It's like the motto of their design team said, assimilate this. Yikes.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Tough little ship.
Yeah, tough little ship. Little.
Well, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how the holodeck technologies, I mean, in a way, it's not so surprising that it took so long from when Tucker encounters it to early TNG, where they really seem to have, with the help of the binars maybe, perfected that technology.
Yeah.
Because other, upper tier technological races like the Romulans, they don't have one.
And yet they still have pretty decent holographic technology.
Aladar
but they
Jirok
don't seem to
comments
have it.
on how,
Yeah.
they take him to holodeck. He's just like, wow, pretty interesting technology.
Yeah. The Klingons
But
don't
it is
seem to
not
use them
my
either.
home.
Um,
But so it's, there's at least a complicated enough technology, as we've seen by it going off the rails so often, that the galaxy's still catching up to it.
yeah. And, it's a very... I mean, it's weird because, it makes that little room a TARDIS in some sense almost, They can kind of go anywhere and do anything they want, even in the midst of being on a vessel that goes anywhere and does anything it wants.
A TARDIS within a TARDIS.
It's I don't know how to make that into a turducken joke, but anyway.
A TARDIS.
A TARDIS. That's right. Kids say the TARDIS things. Well, maybe Time Lords, maybe.
Is that a Doctor Who reference?
I think it was.
Okay.
That may be the only one I ever make.
Maybe the only one I ever get.
Not one of my areas of expertise, that's for sure. But speaking of glitches, though, Holodeck glitches produce some of the funnest episodes.
They do, and they definitely show up in on at least 3 series.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in one sense, the whole episode with Tucker could be understood as a holodeck glitch.
The
But
holodeck
it's-
pregnancy
it's,
glitch, yeah.
yeah.
I just put my hands in some nice little jelly beads.
Just jelly beads.
I mean, wouldn't you stick your hands into a thing if a pretty alien lady said, hey, put your hands into the jelly beads?
You know, when you put it like that.
I think Tucker took a lot of unnecessary flack that episode, perhaps.
Jelly beads.
Jelly beads. So squishy.
They were on that
I've
little
thought about
boat.
this a lot.
It was all real nice.
I really just wanted to do this episode to talk about the squishy beads. Well, that's about all I have to say. Let's wrap this up. No.
I think they were
let's
pickled
talk about
onions.
glitches. I like glitches.
Yeah. Glitches. Glitches produce a number of great stories. It's a good story idea, you know, when the technology goes crazy wrong, especially one that's complicated.
And for different reasons, quite often.
Yeah. I mean, a power surge is a pretty common reason.
Yeah. I believe that's happened in tandem with them storing the consciousnesses.
I think
in our
so,
machine. I believe
yes.
there was also a power surge.
Yeah.
See, that's different from Reg, where he creates the versions of the crew intentionally.
Yeah, this is a
Bashir's
great way to
surprised to find that all his characters in his cool James Bond program were him and the original Taylor, Garrick.
Yeah.
Go
Our
play
man
some
Garrick.
games. Our man Garrick is right.
Yeah, I mean, because Bashir is a real holodeck enthusiast. He loves visiting a number of historical periods, all kinds of... He really likes adventure stories.
Yeah, he's got a lot of Tom Paris kind of in him, in a way.
Yeah.
I love Noah, played by Avery Brooks. Hippocrates Noah, I believe it is. I
Yeah.
believe it's Hippocrates Noah.
Great villain.
Oh, it's so good. He's so over the top, but that's perfect.
Michael Dorn's sort of casino
Yeah,
heavy is wonderful.
yeah.
I really love O'Brien's villain. Is he the Falcon? The Eagle? What's his name?
Oh, he plays Falcon all the time in his
Yeah.
stories, yeah.
Yeah.
Why do I always have to play Falcon? You play it so well. Falcon never gets the girl.
No.
Well, how about this time I get the girl? It's like, no. You're Falcon. Oh, and of course Kira.
Yeah,
She plays the Russian intelligence agent.
indeed. Classic sort of Bond Russian sex plot.
Yep.
And this is a glitch which exhibits another one of the characteristics of those, like The Big Goodbye or others, that there is, in a space of fantasy, there is real danger. Which I think is a really interesting assertion or kind of premise for them to go on. That they go into these places with a kind of assumption of safety and being just sort of completely encased in something that's taking care of them, even if they look like they're in danger.
They're reading a book.
Exactly. But when that goes off and all of a sudden this world catches up in reality in a sense to the outside world, how do they manage that? Especially when what they're trying to catch up to is a world in which they're not even any longer themselves. This kind of redeployment of the face without the personality is kind of lovely, because you're right, it very much mirrors what Reg Barkley does, but without that guiding set of insecurities that are propelling in a certain direction. These are just sort of let loose in Hololand without any anything but the structure of the narrative itself to be guiding them. Now, there's other kinds of glitches, that do show up. Fistful of Datas is a great example,
The data glitch.
where everybody is data.
Everybody's data. Doesn't seem right.
Everybody is as strong as an android and as fast as an android, and makes problems.
And as
in the Old West.
charismatic as Brent Spiner.
Indeed. As charismatic as that.
But yeah, it's a fun little cowboy episode. Little father-son time with Worf and Alexander.
Yeah, and we do get a
Much
few clones
needed.
of Worf and Alexander later too, don't we? In that episode, some more Worfs than Alexanders show up later in the episode too. I think, if I recall correctly. I may
I don't
not
know
be.
about that.
And again, the safeties have gone off, so poor Alexander is in
Oh, yes.
a lot of trouble. Good for
Children
a
on
young
a
warrior.
starship.
Again, point proven.
One, should there be children on or holodecks?
Yeah.
on a starship.
Yeah, precisely. But I think, the
The kind of culmination of that glitch in consciousness is probably, of course, Moriarty, who, of course, we see twice.
first appears in episode 2, or season 2, sorry.
Yeah, Elementary My Dear Data, or Elementary Dear Data. And, of course, Geordi creates him by asking the computer to create a nemesis capable of defeating Data, because the Sherlock Holmes stories weren't fun.
Oh,
Data
he's
was
so
solving them all
mad
in
at Data
15
in the
seconds.
first part of that episode.
It's like, Data? It's like, yes, Geordi.
I've digested the entire works of
Yeah.
Conan Doyle. And it's a great episode to show up Pulaski, Dr. Pulaski's prejudice against Data,
Yeah.
which I think is probably, it's clearly something Data's experienced a lot of because of the ways in which he engages with her. But her ways of going at him seem a little bit novel.
Well, he experiences it on the Sutherland as well.
Absolutely. And I think he experienced it from early on from some of the colonists, who probably also were fearing that he would turn out like Lore.
And then later in the Picard series, we see there was always some tension, and there was some people,
Always.
segment of the Federation that were never quite comfortable.
Yeah,
With Data and the idea of more Datas.
exactly. Yeah.
But Moriarty.
Yeah, so, Dr. Pulaski's bet is that he can't make an inductive leap or a deductive chain of reasoning that he's not already aware of. What he's really saying is that he's not capable of dealing with that unforeseen quality, which so marks their expected experience of the holodeck.
Yeah.
And that's going to be her sort of proof that he's just a tin man.
And of a character and story like that.
Yes.
It's like, this should all be very challenging and very unexpected.
Yes. I do like it that in the end she's been sort of completely charmed by a hologram. And
Yeah, she is.
he's
She
in
loves
Mr.
Moriarty.
Data's debt by the end of
She
the
likes
episode.
Moriarty more than she likes Data.
Absolutely. I think she really enjoys her time with Moriarty. She clearly
But
has.
Moriarty, because of the complexity of that character that the holodeck created, because of Geordi's instructions, is more human than Data.
Yeah.
Especially for kind of a folksy yet intelligent kind of type like Pulaski.
Sure. Sure.
Doesn't mind being charmed by a smooth-talking intelligent gentleman.
Oh, yeah. Everybody likes a scoundrel in their life. Oops.
Oh,
Wrong franchise. But yeah, you got me thinking about that. We were talking earlier about the way in which the holodeck must needs be able to, with sufficient verisimilitude, model consciousness. And multiple consciousnesses at once. At least enough to keep going by you.
And doesn't have a cap on its ability to do that. Because the
Doesn't
more
seem
complex
to.
they can get with their instructions, the more complex it'll create a...
Yep. But, you think about that giving emotions or emotional responses to Moriarty and accidentally confecting a consciousness there.
Created a very emotional being there.
Absolutely. I've never really taken a really hard look at that to see how close that Moriarty is exactly to the Moriarty described in Conan Doyle's Holmes stories. It'd be interesting to see if there are
Confident,
what the
yet a little bit
divergences are
insecure.
between Moriarty and that and the one that shows up in Star Trek. Whether there is another sort of novel element there again. He's not exactly Conan Doyle's Moriarty. He's the Enterprise D's computer's Moriarty developed to defeat Data. And whether there are certain differences that would show up that way. But yeah, he quickly slips the surly bonds of holography and grabs control of the Enterprise itself.
Played by a very fine actor.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Who also played Niles on The Nanny.
Mr. Data!
In Flushing, Queens.
In Flushing Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're dating ourselves again, I think.
It's a good show.
Giving our chronomatrix coordinates.
Jesus, is it this episode or is it the next episode he shows up shipping a bottle? Where what he wants is, one, to leave the holodeck once he knows. But they tell him that's not possible.
Yes.
So or is it shipping a bottle where he wants Countess Bartholomew? Is that shipping a bottle?
That's shipping a bottle.
Right.
This one, he's willing to accept, in
Right.
the end, willing
You're
to
right.
accept Captain Picard's word
Right.
that they
yep.
cannot yet do this for him, but they will not
Instead,
just stop looking.
yeah.
Yeah, they'll keep looking for a way.
Yeah. Which they don't.
Well, not that we see.
No,
I
not
mean,
that
they
we
may have
see.
kicked it down the line to Starbase.
Yeah. Somebody is
186 or
somewhere on
something.
some starbase for sure. But
But they clearly don't make much progress themselves over the next few seasons until he shows up again.
and he's felt all that time, which they did not expect.
Yeah, they didn't think he would. And he's. I wonder if the accident that creates him isn't very interesting to a young holo designer named Felix.
Could be.
You think about you take those pieces of Binar tech you were talking about.
I think the closest comparison we've seen to Moriarty is Vic Fontaine.
is Vic Fontaine, because the Doctor is a different creature again. But I mean, Vic Fontaine has an ability to grab systems
The Doctor I
that
would
Moriarty also had.
relate more to like Data, where he has to learn a bit more how to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite so much as Data.
Well, he starts out with real, authentic emotional responses,
Yeah.
but without any selfhood at all.
No, not
Just a
this
straight up
fully
personality.
formed human like Vic
Yeah,
Fontaine.
because
and
Data has
Moriarty.
loads of personality, but he doesn't have those emotional responses.
Mm-hmm.
You think about I guess that's the point I was going to make earlier. The fact of using that entire holodeck to do that, and the resource is ultimately the starship, I think really makes the point of, or makes an interesting comparison to the miniaturization required by Nooney and Sung to put that little thing in Data, where it was going to go in behind his ear or something like that.
Yeah.
That miniaturization, which would rely, of course, on the total power of his positronic brain to run it, would be a leap forward in that technology, which would be as big as them meeting the holodeck in the first place, I would think.
Yeah.
Deployed in a different way.
So in Ship in a Bottle,
Mm-hmm.
they have to inform Moriarty that he can, in fact, not leave the holodeck.
Yeah.
And then he does. And to their surprise, he walks out of the arch.
Just fine. Yeah. And this is, oh man. And it really recalls the end of The Big Goodbye, or where the two mobsters
Mm-hmm.
slowly disappear from their feet upward.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely visual effect.
Mm-hmm.
But it puts a new twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the entirety of that episode, I thought, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
They've just effaced the distinction between holograms and like real space.
Physical,
They've
matter.
just devised infinite soldiers. This is insane.
Yeah.
Dragons are going to be running around the Enterprise
But
decks or
that
something.
did not turn out to be the case.
Indeed. It
It's
was a
all
really
an
clever
elaborate
twist.
deception from
Mhm.
Moriarty.
And a classic story form as well.
Mm.
There's an ancient poem, a Latin poem by Catullus. Doesn't have a title, but I believe in his
Doesn't
works
have a title?
Doesn't have a title.
Hmm.
But it's numbered, I think, number 64. And in it, it's a powerfully weird poem. But it describes the mystical frenzy of a young man who goes off to a particular mountain to do sort of religious rituals. But by way of describing that, and I'm not going to go into the detail of the rituals because, anyway, it's gross.
Okay.
Okay, so now I have to. Okay, so he castrates himself, then wakes up and figures this out.
Okay.
He's like, oh my god, what just happened? But that's at the end of the poem. In between, when he runs away and when he realizes what's happened, there's this whole set of stories that are nested inside each other. In one case, the way he's running is reminiscent of something else, and so it goes. And by the end of it, you've gone down into the pillow, the detail on the pillow sitting on a couch at the wedding of, supposedly the wedding of Jason and Medea or something. I'm getting this really badly wrong now. At a mythological wedding, which is depicted somewhere near the place where this guy has landed after his religious frenzy, right? So you sort of go 4 or 5 brackets deep in this thing, and then in the end you come all the way back out, and that chiasm, literarily or narratively, is sort of what happens in this.
Mm-hmm.
What they've actually managed to do is devise a memory core that's sufficiently miniaturized to allow him to experience a galaxy,
Yeah.
in a holodeck recreation, essentially, but without a physical holodeck. They've just taken the processing of it.
Yeah.
And so they've given him the best
They need to put that in a drawer or something somewhere.
Essentially, just kind of let. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the sort of thing that Data ended up in Picard.
Yeah.
That's sort of a storage matrix, right?
Did it seem to you that he had that expansive universe that they had to travel? Like, he seemed to be stuck in a
He seemed to be in a pretty small place.
that could manifest different things, like a piano or...
Yeah. But it was not as complex a space. I don't know if it was
It's like he was in a
fancy
holodeck, kind of. I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, Moriarty.
And it's an
good
interesting
character.
ending for that, an interesting send-off for that character.
Yeah, it was nice.
Because they really did sort of
It's the best
try
they
and
could do
right
for
by
him.
him.
Yeah.
But they
I mean,
couldn't bring him
after
into the
he
world.
forced them to, of course.
Sure. Yes. Well, you know.
What can you do? Where we really see the dangers of the holodeck amped up is when the Hirogen get a hold of it.
Right.
Such as in the Killing Game, where the safeties are off.
Yes.
No safeties.
Yes, and the Hirogen, I think, are running they're running a World War II simulation,
They're
aren't they?
running several simulations. They've expanded several decks.
Oh, that's
into-
right.
With holo emitters.
That's right.
And they have a Klingon program where Neelix is a Klingon.
Oh, right.
He makes good Klingon. He's pretty funny.
He's interesting. I like him as a Klingon.
Yeah, I do too. There's the World War II scenario. And they mention other scenarios as well.
But I think those are the only two we really ever see. Aren't
Yeah,
they?
I think so.
Yeah. And
But
so
yeah,
they've
it's
been.
it's a crazy episode. Shows you what can really go wrong with a holodeck with just a little simple
Yeah.
turning off the safety protocol
Yeah.
and some malevolent enemy species showing up.
Now, my Voyager timeline is not super great, if I confess. Is this their first meeting? This is not their first meeting with the Hirogen, is
No.
it? This
No.
is almost sort of the revenge of the Hirogen.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely them catching up to them later in a way. I don't know if it's the same group they've encountered.
Oh,
before.
no,
I don't
but
think
certainly
it is.
I think the Hirogen may know about Voyager
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah,
And that is an
worthy prey.
Yeah, that has an interesting ending as well.
Yeah, good episode.
Yeah. I mean, they ultimately managed to retake the ship.
Seven has a lovely singing voice.
Oh, that's right. But now, in the end,
Someone to watch.
they gift holotechnology to the Hirogen.
Risky.
Yeah. Risky
They
business.
don't even pass that to people in the Alpha Quadrant, but they would have to deal with the repercussions of that more.
Yeah, indeed. And I think the intention there was to allow
Save
the
lives.
Hirogen to
Hunt.
have sport that would allow them to stop just randomly going around murdering people.
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, allow them to sort of be themselves, but also not be noisome to others at that moment.
However, there was an unintended consequence. Which catches up to them later in another episode called Flesh and Blood.
Well, that's right. This is where they've gone pretty heavily into developing their holograms. Not necessarily, I don't think, the technology itself, but the quality of the holograms.
Yeah,
In terms of their responses as prey.
they feel pain now.
I think they made them more intelligent as well. They made them more aware.
Yeah, they may even remember their past lives and dying. I can't remember.
I think there may have been some mention of that, but I'm not certain.
But they certainly do feel pain because they want, real fear responses. And
Yeah.
so she didn't anticipate them. So then those holograms rise up against the Hirogen and kill all the Hirogen, I believe,
Yeah,
on that ship.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then it's, Janeway and Voyager confronted with a real hollow rights kind of issue.
Exactly. Yeah. Ship full of deeply traumatized holograms.
Yeah. What do you do with those? That she's somewhat responsible for the creation of.
Indeed. In an act essentially of desperation to save her own ship and crew.
And that comes up with the Doctor character a lot too. The hollow rights. When does
And the burning question there is sentience, right? As it is in so many of these instances, where the question is, as much is it alive as it is it sentient?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm not sure the Doctor could be
Classified
exactly
as alive.
understood as alive.
No, I don't think so.
But I think he is sentient in some capacity.
Whereas I think you could say Data is alive.
What a great question.
He's not biological, of course.
He's not biologically alive,
But he's
no.
just the technological version of that.
Yeah. But it asks really interesting
But
questions
the
about...
Doctor's photonic version of that, so...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, I think the question that's posed is what is the relationship of consciousness to particular places?
And to physicality.
Exactly, right? Like, there was this ancient philosopher, student of my great ancient dead friend Plotinus, a guy named Porphyry, who wrote this wonderful treatise. I think I may have mentioned it on this podcast before, maybe not. About
That Boolean guy.
it's that Boolean guy. That's right.
Never
Anyway,
living it.
it's called the sentences or starting points toward the intelligible ideas. But the first chapter of it runs thus, and it's verbatim because chapters just mean headings and it's quite short. It says, everything which is a body, and by that he just means an object, like an extended object, not like a living body, just like a chair or a person or a duck or a pond, whatever. Anything that is a body exists in some place. So we all have somewhere that we are, and we literally circumscribe an individual location in which nothing else can also be. So there's a sort of principle of discreteness and alienation in time and space, which is necessary to that whole kind of existence. And then he says, everything which exists in and through itself, or anything of such a kind, is in no place. And that's the basic distinction he makes. And I think consciousness would fall on the side of that thought that is no place, a no thing.
Or as Moriarty would say, cogito ergo sum.
Precisely. I think, therefore I am, right? Descartes' famous formulation.
Picard's like, that's one definition. Moriarty's like, what other definition could there be? Not just for self-preservation, but I think he believed that as a philosophical idea.
Well, and it's perfectly reasonable, that sense of self.
If I can have a conversation
presence
with you and we're both having that same conversation, how am I less real than you?
Yeah. I mean, how is my thought process any more reducible than yours to something else? It's not.
And he's someone who, believes in the creation of the intellect and things like that. And just like, if I can create a thought that's in the world, or
absolutely, right? And
say a phrase.
Yeah, it's the mark of a certain kind of culture that they would imagine that thoughts and consciousness is less real than the bodies it operates. And I think ultimately Star Trek in this sense is particularly when we look at all the different biological schemes things have, or non-biological schemes. Data or holograms in this case. I feel like Star Trek, whether it means to or not, implicitly poses the question of, the relationship of consciousness to physicality, as you say, but doesn't place any strict limits on that. We can have everything from silicon creatures to positronic creatures to photonic creatures, right? And in the Captain Proton episode of Voyager, what is that? Is that Bride of Chaotica or something like that? The ship is in fact being invaded by dudes in suits in black and white.
That believes they're photonic beings as well.
Exactly,
yeah.
And they're actually independently existing photonic beings who have come into the holodeck and thought, well, this is a very interesting place that we've arrived in.
Dave, I just thought of this.
Mm-hmm.
When a holographic baby feeds, does it Halloween?
Eventually.
Okay, not a real question.
Oh my God. It was a real pun, though.
It was a real pun. Boy, howdy was it.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Beam me up.
But, the ultimate question there of the rights of these holographic beings.
It's tricky business creating consciousnesses.
It is. And they seem to happen by accident. in some ways, both biologically and holographically.
Was the Doctor an accident?
Ultimately, I think he ends up being a kind of an accident. He's just left on so long, he compiles a sort of historical selfhood for himself. And that becomes the basis for something else.
Did Andy Dick's character not express that sort of selfhood? He's kind of just been turned on for the first time.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But he's an advanced model.
Yeah.
But he seemed to have self-preservation in mind, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, he definitely did.
Mm-hmm.
And the desire to preserve the ship on which he exists, not just his own existence within it.
Computer and program. He just shuts himself off. Restore EMH. You again.
You again.
What do you want? But as we've discussed on this show, that's Felix.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite likely
Felix.
Could possibly be. Now, I mean, the mention of Felix does bring us back, I think, to the greatest hologram in Star Trek.
Certainly the favorite of this show.
Our friend and yours.
The fourth Taylor, you might even say.
Indeed. Indeed. And the first Fontaine. Vic Fontaine. Our number one pally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Vic advocates for his own rights in interesting ways.
Sure, he's not concerned about being turned off.
Although when he's allowed to stay running...
He loves it.
He absolutely loves it.
Didn't really consider it.
No, the first thing he asks for, I think, is the ability to turn himself off, isn't it?
He had to essentially buy an entire Holo suite from Quark.
Yeah.
Says this one will constantly be running for you, bud.
Yeah.
And that's Quark's competition, too. He doesn't really like Vix.
No, I don't think he does.
Too many people hang out there.
Just charge Vic rent, I suppose.
Yeah.
They must have to make some kind of arrangement that way.
Yeah. Assumingly with Nog.
Oh, yeah. When Nog was doing his books, he probably worked out a nice relationship with
Too.
Yeah. But, Vic Fontaine as an existing holographic person, not just a persona, is fascinating. And I think he's one of the places that certainly I look to when I'm thinking about where it goes from there. The wonderful set of Chris Rios holograms of his, fragments of his personality.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting use of holograms.
Another interesting use of them. Or that lovely hologram that goes with Picard through the Starfleet archives.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed her
she's good.
In that episode. And she shows up and she disappears and she's there when she needs him and she's not. She does other things when she's not. Or shuts off, whatever.
Who was here last? You. Okay.
Yeah. On what? There's the date.
All right then.
But yeah, that kind of hologram, which can wander around in the rest of the world, or all over a ship, or all over a building studded with holo emitters, one maybe, is a real different
mobile
creature.
emitters from the future.
Yeah, with the Doctor's mobile emitter.
I mean, that's where really you'd have a hard time arguing for his rights as a person, where he has physical autonomy then as well.
Yes.
Not just something that seems like a function of the medical bay.
Yeah, yeah. There he would acquire a kind of autonomy that would allow him to kind of navigate the world, right? And he does that on several occasions. Yeah, he becomes an opera star.
And get a family.
I don't think I ever heard him sing Actua Milota, though.
No, I don't know that he was a fan of.
It's not for every voice.
Seems to be more of an Earth traditionalist.
Well, La Donna Mobile.
Mobile.
Oh, back in his opera days. That was even before the Negvar days.
You are a Vulcan man. You have gone without for 7 years about. It's a great episode.
I really enjoy
Was that Tinker
Robert
Tenor
Picardo's
Dr.
singing
Spy?
voice
That's
as well.
a good one.
I think it might have been.
He's a singer. He likes to sing whenever he
Picardo's
can
a
in that
great
show,
singer.
for sure.
Yeah.
I like his duet with Seven.
Oh, yeah.
You Are My Sunshine.
Yeah, that's nice.
But yeah, the Doctor's family was interesting because he's trying to achieve what we've seen be achieved with things like Moriarty and Vic. He wants to create a real life. Well, He says he does, but he just creates an idealistic version at first.
Yes.
Oh, Papa, you're home. How was your day? We're all getting straight A's and we're so happy. Here's your supper.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit maudlin at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then B'Elanna makes some adjustments. And it gets intense.
Yeah, it gets a bit
Maybe a
Klingon.
touch too far, B'Elanna. Jeez. Jeez. That episode takes a turn.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I took away from it. At the end, I'm like, okay, that was crazy. B'Elanna!
Yeah.
What did you
Why would you do that?
What did you do?
Just wreck his stuff. Man.
Jeez.
Now, there's some other great holograms on Voyager. We've already talked about Captain Proton, sure, and we've already talked about Krell Set.
Captain Proton's not a hologram, but of course, Chaotica.
Yeah, Chaotica. Well, the one I was thinking of, though, honestly, was Trevis and Flotter stories.
Oh, Trevis and Flotter. Oh, yes. Lovely children's characters.
Yes, yes. They're the bedtime stories and constant companions of the youngest member of the Voyager.
Trevis was played by the guy who plays the lead captain in Stargate Universe.
Interesting. Bet you he's not from Flushing, Queens.
Justin Lewis.
Oh, okay.
His actor name, anyway. Louis Ferreira, maybe?
Yeah. The young friends of Naomi Wildman.
Yes.
Subunit of Ensign Wildman.
Subunit Naomi Wildman, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do love that relationship between Seven and Naomi
I believe
Wildman.
I hear my subunit right now.
Your subunit is actively calling out and advocating for herself.
Yes. As subunits do.
They do.
In their...
Their search for sustenance and survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently from the alcove.
Yeah. And Trevis and Flotter, you can see there's a way in which that use of the holodeck to deal with things can start from a really early age. You know, I wonder if when we see people like Geordi and Barclay going into holodecks to do this sort of stuff, if this isn't a kind of activity that lots of young kids in the Federation, especially kids on starships, which might have these things readily available in ways that, you know, a kid in the middle of wherever, on a colony or on Earth or somewhere, might not necessarily have such ready access. They might be at the community center or something like that, but you're not necessarily going to have it 2 doors down from your quarters.
Space station, maybe.
Exactly, right?
Or wherever Ferengis are setting up shop.
Also true, except I'm not sure their parents are going to let them go there. But
the word has it in at least some beta canon that Ferengis came up with the holodecks and gave it to sold it.
Oh,
Definitely sold it to the Federation.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, because I suppose there's no actual technology exchange with Zillions.
No, I'm sure they got it somewhere.
There's just a biological exchange.
They probably bought it from the Zerillians.
Could have been.
But
Although I could see some enterprising Ferengi developing it as a surefire way of telling dramas and doing content programming and all that kind of stuff, right?
Good Ferengi scientists like Rhaegar.
Sure. He's got the lobes for it.
Poor Rhaegar. Let's take us out of here with 2 of my favorite holodeck episodes. One of which features the great Vic Fontaine. Mm-hmm. But first, let's take ourselves out to the Holosuite.
Ah. Batter up.
Death to the opposition.
Oh, that's a great episode.
My game.
It pulls so many of the threads of DS9 together. Baseball.
Is it Salok?
Family.
Is that the
I think it is. You know, relationship, history, and like personal history as well as like actual history, you know? Because the whole episode is really about Cisco and Salok and that personal history they have. That
stemming from a bar fight when Cisco was drunk.
Yeah.
Challenged a Vulcan to wrestle.
And challenged a Vulcan racist, you know?
See, there's some racists in Starfleet.
And that's being noted in Vulcans on a couple of occasions. You see similar things, similar suggestions in...
Certainly in Enterprise.
Yeah. And I think there, what you also see is, you see it in the context of their ongoing cultural exchange. That Vulcans are still deeply affronted by what they see as the reckless emotionality of humans. Just not even bothering to control how they feel. And making decisions somehow in the midst of that they think are justified.
And Salok's allowed to have, assuming that's his name, we're going to go with Salok.
Sure.
Though, is allowed to have an all-Vulcan crew.
Mm-hmm.
So they're at least aware of this racism and are okay with it on some level.
Yeah. Or they simply accept it as something that's not going to... They've assessed it and decided that that particular unfortunate personality quirk is not going to affect this fellow's performance as captain in enough situations that they figure it's okay. Solok.
Solok.
Very close, very close.
Okay, Solok. Thank you, Dave.
No trouble, just thought I'd look it up. But yeah, I mean, at some level, that one suspects the culture on that ship might also be a bit misanthropic, you know? And he takes what seems to be a certain kind of...
Good ball players.
Good ball players. Well, yeah, we talked about Vulcan physiology a couple of weeks ago, I guess, or a couple of episodes ago. And in the midst of that, you know, I think it's important to remember that they do grow up on a high-gravity world. They evolved in an environment that leaned toward bone density and very, very tough muscle fibers that has got to leave them a great set of arms to bat with.
They did have enough humor on that crew to come up with the greatest team name, though.
What was that?
The Logicians.
Oh, yes. The Logicians. They probably thought it was a good lot.
I mean, I'm a Niners fan myself. Go Niners.
You know, I want to see them play Cestus 3.
I think they'll really take the Cestus Cup this year.
You know baseball?
You know baseball.
Oh, gosh, what a scene. Yeah.
But yeah, I love that episode. Take Me to the Hall Suite, one of my favorites.
Yeah. It always reminds me of the pilot as well, because there's that wonderful scene with the batting, and you never know what's going to happen when you throw the ball. And
well, this one's an episode about, you know, not letting a personal vendetta spill over onto other people.
I think also about accepting one's own limits as well, right? As a way of excelling. Because he's got to accept that he cannot physically match himself to a Vulcan and expect to come out on top.
Which he comes up with the greatest solution to. Manufacture triumph! To manufacture triumph. It's like you were manufacturing a victory, or manufacturing victory, or whatever it is. You manufacture victory! This is highly illogical.
Oh, yeah.
They got their one run, though. That was another small victory.
That's true. That's true. It was a real underdog story.
Find him and kill him!
Yeah, Worf's understanding of baseball is not immaculate.
He didn't touch the plate. Find him and kill him. He has broken the rules. It's like what's that quote I sent you? There are no bad ideas,
just ideas worthy of death.
Yes, just ideas worthy of death.
The very Klingon philosophical proposition.
Good ideas and ideas worthy of death. The Klingon outlook.
And they all meet in "Today is a good day to die." A good idea worthy of death.
So yeah, great episode. But last one I think we'll talk about is well, a couple of Vic episodes.
Okay,
let's get into some Vic Fontaine. Since he's a friend of ours, we should talk nicely of him. The episode "His Way" is, of course, the one with his relationship with Nog. No, "His Way" is Vic's first episode. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, where he reads the room real fast.
Yeah, he reads the room. That's a great scene.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Putting Odo and Kira on the spot like
and you
that.
two, forget about it.
Oh, gosh.
I know you miss your wife, Pally, but, like, your eyes are broken.
They are broken. No, that date between Odo and Kira.
Oh, that was awkward.
Oh,
that was a
gosh,
bad idea,
that is
Vic.
just about one of the most
Vic's not
painful scenes.
That's why Vic wasn't my counselor.
Yeah, it's true.
In a segment.
Yeah, he's not necessarily an awesome matchmaker that way.
Not a terrible counselor, but
God, it was
sometimes.
Just so uncomfortable to watch. I mean, brilliantly done that way because it was obviously intended to be an incredibly uncomfortable scene, and it's very
with
effective.
Odo of all people who's so easily embarrassed. He
Exactly.
Takes it to heart and sulks about it for months.
Yes. Yeah, he really does.
It's a sensitive fella.
He is. He's a sensitive little guy. Sensitive ball of goo.
Yeah, little goo.
We're back to the balls of goo again. That's all you want, your squishy balls. Give me the squishy balls.
But I think my favorite Vic episode is Bada Bing, Bada Bang.
Oh, gosh.
Captain, can you join me?
Great. That's the great heist, isn't
That
it?
is the great
Oh,
heist.
yeah. One of the only times Cisco ever comes into Vix.
And we get to hear the interesting reason why.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Oh, that conversation between...
Him and Cassidy.
yeah, it's great. I don't want to go back to a place that was like that for...
We were not welcome.
Yeah. She's like, well, what? Like, that's...
She's like, but I'm welcome there.
And I love that
And that's how it should have
kind
been.
of twist that she can give it, right? She's
Yeah.
like, we can
That's how it should have been. We can relive it how it should
see a
have been.
redeemed version of that, right?
Which is a nice outlook.
Even while we're conscious of what the flaws of the actual history would have been.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
This is important.
I think that's an interesting approach to it, and certainly an approach that is very 24th century, say, as opposed to 21st century, where we're still very much reckoning with the history that's ongoing and has yet to really be resolved in ways that are healing everyone, right? Which seems to have been accomplished in large part by the 24th century. Those kind of cultural divisions in humanity have been not forgotten, but it seems there's been a lot of healing that way in the species. I love the heist itself.
Yeah, Frankie Eyes
Oh, yeah.
coming in to take over the casino.
Another unexpected consequence of letting Vic's story run all the time.
Which was a Jack in the Box. That was supposed to happen. Felix put that in there on purpose. This wasn't a glitch.
Nope.
So
But,
the crew treated it as such because they just loved Vic so much.
Indeed. I do love it that
Yeah.
this crew of highly disciplined, extremely ethical Starfleet officers gets inside Vix and they act exactly. And I say this as a guy who has been a DM since he was 13 years old. They act exactly like a group of player characters. Like, loot and pillage!
They immediately leave and call Felix, and he's just like, nothing I can do about it.
And they just immediately start doing crime.
Yeah, yeah. How can we steal the money
just
from
do
this
some
casino
crime.
so he can't pay the mobster and get killed in the street?
Right? And they all love this as
Yeah,
players.
this is great.
But again, they know that Frankie Two Eyes is...
Oh, Frankie, yeah.
He's a hologram. They know that all of the other dudes are holograms. Vic counts as a person. And it's interesting, right? Because even he knows the difference.
Mhm.
The band's going to quit.
The band's
They
gonna
can't quit. They're holograms. They don't know
They
that.
don't know that. Love that line.
It's great, right? It's the whole thing in a nutshell. Because Vic is self-aware as a hologram.
But if they won't believe him if he tells
No.
them it.
No way.
It's not in their program.
He's outside the fourth wall and they're not, right? And I would love to know what Vic Fontaine's later history was.
Mhm.
I mean, does he just stay
He's
in a
just the-
holosuite
yeah.
in Quarks? That
On Deep
original
Space
franchise
Nine.
establishment of Quarks?
Yeah.
Or does does Vic show up in every Quarks?
The original establishment of Quarks just Vic's now.
Is it Vic's place? Yeah.
They could have just expanded the holo projectors. Or
Has he managed to get his hands on one of those projectors the doctor from Voyager had?
you know what? Let's ask him.
End transmission.
Oh man, wait till Vic hears all the great things we were saying about him.
Oh yeah. I hope he likes it.
Oh, he's gonna look. Oh wait.